Chapter 17. Sergei von Zarovich. They were far down the lane, heading toward town, when Irina, Rowan, and Navara all started talking at once. "What kind of disturbed maniac thinks Strahd's going to fall for a golem?" Rowan asked. "I don't care what that stupid angel says." Navara swished her head from side to side. "I saw the life in Vasilka's eyes. She definitely has a soul. All people who can think and have free will are just as valuable. She is a person." "I didn't think I'd meet another psychopath who wants me," Irina said, her voice seething with anger. "Vasilka at least has a spirit, like all living creatures do," Navara continued. "That's the Eladrin belief." "And what are mongrel folk?" Rowan asked. "Are they all as deformed as Otto?" "Henry," Navara said, taking his arm, "you should ask your patron about souls." "You mean Lathander?" Henry asked. The warlock would think of his god as a patron. "Yes, him. He's the same god as the Morning Lord, right? You said you were going to talk to him. You should ask him what to do. We mustn't let that angel go on hurting Vasilka. We can't let him give her to the vampire." "If you do pray, please ask the Morning Lord about my soul too," Irina said. "I need to know if Tatiana really is a part of me, or am I just some version of her?" "I also think that sword from the prophecy is in the abbey," Rowan said. "Henry, ask the Morning Lord about the sword." Henry ran his hands through his hair. The Morning Lord wouldn't listen to him. Why would the god of light pay any attention to a paladin who had not prayed sincerely in years? They walked by the overlook, where the pond stood still, and the statue in the gazebo reached out as though it were calling to him. Back at the burgomaster's house, the children sat on the floor holding old wooden toys, but neither the little boy nor girl was playing with them, as if they didn't know how. Anna was pulling out more toys from a faded blue box, and casually asked Henry if the abbot would take Milivoj as an acolyte. At the same time, Rowan and Navara touted their various opinions at the dining table, going on about the sword, the deformed Bellevues, and the state of Vasilka's soul. Henry ran a hand through his hair, again, and sighed. "Lady Anna," he said, looking at the children, "can I talk to you and your husband in private?" Henry went with Anna and found Dmitri at the village granary. "Listen," Henry said to them, his warm breath curling like smoke in the chilly air. "The abbot won't be training Milivoj. In fact, he shouldn't even be an abbot. Not only is he failing to perform his duties, but he's been defiling the dead." From his dreams, Henry remembered the abbot ordering Otto and other mutants to dig up graves and find body parts. It was all to create Vasilka. In the dreams he had not known which town or graveyard they'd been vandalizing, but now there was no mistaking it. It was Kresik. Henry told them about the abbot's atrocities and how the mad angel planned to meet with Strahd. Though Dmitri and Anna said they had known nothing about the abbot before, and Henry believed them. These revelations brought no astonishment to their tired faces, only looks of despondency and resignation. It was only when Henry told them that he and his friends would do something about it, that Dmitri and Anna became concerned. "I'd leave the abbot alone if I were you," Dmitri said. "We don't want any trouble." "Trouble is already here, whether you like it or not." "What do you plan to do?" Anna asked. Henry needed to talk with the others first, but he said, "Whatever happens to us, do you think you could watch Milivoj and the children? We can't take them with us. It will be too dangerous. But they're orphans and have nowhere to go." Anna held one of the toys she had pulled from the old box and pressed it to her chest. "We'll watch over them." Later that night, Rowan, Irina, and Navara were still talking in circles. Nothing had been decided. Henry could not take it any longer and got up.
"Where are you going?"
Navara called after him when he stepped out the door of the burgomaster's house. "I just need to get some fresh air." This time he did not turn right toward the abbey. He turned left toward the north side of the village, where he knew he would find the pool that beckoned him.
"Henry, wait up!"
He turned to see that Irina had followed him.
"May I walk with you?"
she asked. He nodded, and the two of them walked in silence until they reached the edge of the pool. The water was still as glass, reflecting the starry sky.
"I'm sorry, Henry,"
Irina said, turning to look at him. Her face was pretty in the moonlight. Then again, she was always pretty.
"I'm sorry about earlier, when I was going on and on. We were all pestering you at a moment when you needed us most. It must have been horrible, finding out who that angel was, how he'd been affecting your life. I just want you to know that I'm here for you."
She touched the surface of the pool with the tip of her boot, causing a ripple in the inky blackness.
"I can go back to the burgomaster's, if you want to be alone."
"You can stay," Henry said, his face inches from hers. "I'm glad you came. I actually came here to pray for you, to ask the Morning Lord how I can help you." Irina put a gentle hand on his smooth cheek. She traced his jawline, his nose, and then his mouth, letting her fingers linger there. Henry closed his eyes, and then it happened. He felt her warm lips against his. The sensation sent his heart racing. He cupped her head in his hands with tender affection, and all the horrors of the day faded to oblivion. When their lips parted, Irina looked up at him with eyes that could have outshined all the stars. She gave a coy smile and said, "You should go pray, Henry Gibson." Henry wanted to kiss her again, but the night was waning, and he needed to come up with a plan before morning came. "I'll stay nearby if you want," she said. "I'd like that. I'll be just over there." He gestured to the gazebo. Irina walked around the pond, sending up her own prayers to the heavens, while Henry knelt before the lichen-covered statue. It was a depiction of the Morning Lord. Rain and wind had not been kind to it. The statue was missing its nose, and black streaks of grime ran down its face, as though it had been crying for centuries. Henry stayed up the rest of the night keeping vigil, yearning for answers. He prayed every prayer he remembered, even the ones his mother had taught him as a boy, and after he was too tired to remember any more, he simply said, "Please, God, have mercy," over and over. When the light of dawn came creeping in over the eastern horizon, Henry stretched his stiff legs and walked back to the pool. Irina met him by the edge of the pond, and, when they were about to leave, she caught his arm.
"Henry, look!"
Reflected in the water was a bright and glorious sunrise. Up above, the sky was cloudy and dismal, but within the glassy pool, the sun shone with a golden hue, and Henry could almost feel its warmth. A figure appeared in the water, like a reflection of someone standing beside Henry and Irina. But when Henry looked behind him, there was no one. Only in the pool, shining as though he were crowned by the sunrise, stood the figure, a young man with wavy black hair and handsome features. Henry thought at first he was looking at another reflection of himself. The man looked identical to Henry, except for his archaic dress and regal bearing, which reminded Henry of Strahd. "Tatiana! Tatiana!" the man in the pool said, reaching for Irina. "Tatiana, it is I! At last you can see me again! Come with me, darling, and be free of the curse forever!" Irina held on to Henry's arm and shook her head with vehemence. "I don't know you, and I'm not Tatiana," The man's eyes turned up in pain, as though someone had stabbed him.
Tatiana, what has happened to you? Did my brother enchant you? Is he so wicked that he would harm the one he claims to love? My name is Irina Kolyana. I'm the daughter of Kolyan Indirovich, and I have no intention of going anywhere with you. I don't even know who you are. I am your Sergei, Sergei von Zarovich, or at least a memory of him, preserved here in these waters. Hopefully my soul went to the Morning Lord when I died. But don't you remember? What about the first time we met in the town square? Music and dancing filled the streets, and you asked me if I wanted to join. But you told me later you didn't know who I was, or you would never have been so bold. You said a peasant girl had no right to ask a prince to dance with her. But I've never been the same since. And remember the time we galloped Lucy and Troilus over the hill by the castle. Once we got to the top, the horses spooked at a hare, and we both fell off. I would have been hobbling around on a broken ankle for days if I didn't know how to heal it with magic. You looked so worried seeing me lying there on the grass, but I thought it was hilarious. A prince falling on his ass because of some rabbit. These memories and more you can share with me forever if you come into the pool. I don't know all that Strahd has done, but I know Barovia is not safe for you. Irina never took her eyes from the water, nor her hand from Henry's arm. Even if my soul was once Tatiana, she said, I'm Irina now. I don't want to be trapped in a pool of memories that are not my own. But if you are Sergei's memory, can you tell us what happened to you? How did you die?
The man's mouth turned down, and his soft eyes filled with sadness. I was killed on our wedding day. My wedding day. I knew my brother was envious of me, but to stab me in the back. He shook his head. He murdered me. I loved my brother. But Tatiana, I needed to save her from him, and I couldn't. All I could do as I lay dying was to say one last prayer. I begged the Morning Lord to give me the strength to save her. It was my only wish. But alas, I died. Henry listened with growing interest. He thought of his own prayers to the Morning Lord, and the magic in the pool before them. It was an answer. Henry knit his brow in thought. If this was the memory of Sergei, maybe he could tell them how to defeat Strahd. What was so special about your sword? Henry asked. Strahd mentioned it in his diary. Apollo? Apollo shined with the power of the sun. The sword's radiance was unmatched, truly a magnificent weapon. Sunlight, Henry thought. We need to find a sword of sunlight. Rowan would be biting at the bit if she were here. Where is Apollo now? Henry asked. I don't know. I don't know what happened to it after I died. Henry looked to Irina. He still wanted her to be safe. That was the reason they had come to Kresik in the first place. She was the reason he had gone to Vallaki. She was the reason he stayed in Barovia. He could not go back home now. That was what the angel wanted. No creature, angelic or undead, would control his fate. The abbot needed to die, and so did Strahd. But Henry did not want Irina to suffer through it all. Irina, Henry said, you don't have to stay and fight because you feel obligated. You have a choice. You could be happy if you go with Sergei. No, I'm staying. There was finality in her voice. Irina was her own person. Henry understood, maybe not fully, but he recognized that same yearning to live free, refusing to accept the labels others applied. He admired her for it. This woman standing beside him had such vigor, such joy of life, such courage in the face of insurmountable adversity. And Strahd was right about one thing. She was beautiful. Henry felt guilty for thinking it. Irina already had so much unwanted attention from men. But he was glad she had chosen to stay. He wanted to be with her. After casting a last mournful glance at Irina, the image in the pool faded until it reflected only the cloudy sky. Henry looked up at the abbey on the mountainside. I believe St. Markovia has been keeping watch over Apollo. What say you, Irina? Shall we go find it?
How do you suggest we look for it with the abbot around? Henry, you're not thinking about fighting him, are you? He's a powerful angel.
Henry had every intention of killing that angel, but he needed to find the sword first. Remember, I have magic that can show me where an object is, if it's near enough. Now that I know the sword's name, I should be able to find it. Apollo, weapon of sunlight.
So once we get in the abbey, you can cast your spell to find the sword?
Henry nodded. We'll get in and get out.
But the abbot...
Let me worry about him. After leaving the pool, they returned to the burgomaster's house and recounted the night's events to Navara and Rowan. The two elves were eager to hear everything about the vision in the pool, and especially about the sword. All four of them agreed to Henry's plan and set out for the abbey straight away. Henry was thankful, however, that Irina had neglected to mention certain details, like the kiss they had shared, and his own uncanny resemblance to Sergei. When they came within view of the abbey's outer gate, but not within earshot of Otto or Siegfried, Henry prayed, moving his hands and saying the divine words while he focused his mind. Where is the sword Apollo? The spell was cast, and he felt a strong pull drawing him toward the abbey. It was there. Again they met the Bellevues, and again Otto led them through the inner gate to the central courtyard. And once again Henry, Irina, Navara, and Rowan stepped into the dining hall. But this time, thanks to Herkomoid's scouting ahead, they knew the room would be vacant. They had a few precious minutes alone before Otto found the abbot on the other side of the cloister and told him he had guests. The pull of Henry's spell beckoned him to the cold fireplace behind the long table. Henry rushed over to it, searching for any hidden compartment. He looked up at the large golden disk hanging above the mantel and ran his fingers along the edge. It shifted. He moved the disk aside to reveal a hole in the wall.
The treasure you seek is hidden behind the sun. That must be it,
Navara said, as she and the others watched Henry. Upon inspection, however, the hole's contents proved somewhat disappointing. 4 candelabras, a dusty set of silverware, and a clay jar were the only things that occupied the hidden alcove. Henry moved the items around to see if there was anything else, but there was nothing.
Someone's coming down the stairs,
Irina hissed.
Where's the sword?
Rowan pushed Henry aside to see for herself. There's nothing here, he said.
Just take that jar,
Navara pointed.
It might have something inside.
Despite thinking it was probably a salt pot for the dinner table, Henry grabbed the corked jar, no bigger than a pint of ale.
It's him,
Irina said with dread.
Quick, Henry, whispered Navara. Open the jar.
Don't do that, Rowan said.
You might unleash a curse or something. We still need to find the sword.
Henry? The abbot's voice, low and deep, caused Henry's heart to race. Snooping around my abbey, are we? The knight stepped away from the mantel, jar still in hand. I see you found something. Give it to me. The abbot held out his hand. What is it? Henry asked offhandedly, trying to hide his true emotions. That was given to me by a necromancer. Now hand it over. Henry looked to Irina and Navara. Rowan was nowhere to be seen, but Henry thought he saw a spider going up the chimney. If he could hold off the abbot for long enough, maybe Rowan could find the sword. Though his spell had already dropped, he knew the weapon had to be somewhere near the chimney. Who was this necromancer? Did he hide something dead inside? Henry asked, holding up the jar. Maybe it was an urn. I've never opened it, the abbot said calmly. The Morning Lord actually wanted me to give it to you. But you won't be needing it. You're not staying in Barovia. Now hand it over. So, Henry said, what you're saying is this jar belongs to me. It belongs to this abbey. I am its steward. You just said the Morning Lord wanted me to have it. So, thank you. You forfeit the Morning Lord's gift when you leave Barovia, which you will do. You don't belong here, Henry. Actually, I think I'll stay. I think I like it here in Barovia. Good food, nice weather, friendly people. I'm not going to play games with you, Henry. Either you give me that jar you've stolen, or suffer the consequences. So you're saying I've stolen something that's rightfully mine? That doesn't make sense. You still haven't told me what's in it. The abbot's eyes gleamed, and his face hardened like marble as he reached for the whip on his belt. You need to be taught a lesson in obedience. You will leave Barovia like a good little boy. Henry tightened his grip on the jar, sick of being told what to do. You can't push me around with your holier-than-thou doublespeak, or intimidate me like everyone else around here. You pissed off the wrong Azamar. The paladin drew his sword and unfurled his wings, lighting the room with their numinous glow. He rose a foot off the ground until his eyes were level with the abbot's. Very well, said the angel. If you will not learn, then you must die. His hand drifted from the whip to a more sinister weapon on his belt, a flanged mace. The abbot puffed out his chest. Two enormous white-feathered wings unfurled from his back, each one spanning twice the length of Henry's. Oh, shit! Henry lifted his shield in front of his face, just as the angel's mace came down with a whack. The impact threw Henry to the ground, but he landed on his feet and delivered a slash across his opponent's thigh. The abbot looked down at the red wound, his expression a mix of disbelief and rage. Henry smiled. So angels bleed. The abbot's eyes burned white-hot, and he rained fury on the knight with his mace. Henry flew into the air again, his shield meeting every attack, his sword answering blow for blow. "I've got your back, Henry!" Navara shouted from the other side of the hall. Her green blast hit one of the angel's wings, and feathers blew in every direction. "Gotcha!" Navara said. But before she could fire another spell, someone's fist slammed into her gut like a sledgehammer. It knocked the wind out of her. "Stop hurting Daddy!" Vasilka screamed. The golem took another swing at the warlock, and Navara saw stars when the second punch connected with her jaw. Irina put herself in front of Navara and struck the golem a blow that should have cloven a person's head, but her sword merely bounced off with an unnatural clink. "That's not good," Irina said. Though Henry was ably defending himself and even landing strokes of his own, the angel's greater strength was beginning to tell. The unrelenting onslaught of the mace was wreaking havoc on Henry's armor. He thought it might soon become a tangle of scrap iron if he wasn't crushed beneath it first. Already the shooting pain that came with every breath told him that some of his ribs were cracked. Still he raised his shield. Still he cut and thrust with his sword. The ground shook as the abbot pounded Henry to the floor. But just then, a stone hit the angel in the head, jarring him for a moment. Beaten and wounded, Henry struggled to his feet. Rowan was standing by the fireplace, staff poised. She grabbed another stone from her bag.
"I couldn't find this sword,"
she yelled, then cast the stone with her magic. The abbot didn't bother to dodge, letting the projectile smack against his chest and shrugging it off. Again he launched himself at Henry. The abbot seemed not to care about anything in the world but crushing the Azamar beneath his mace.
"Henry!"
Navara shouted, her face bloody now from Vasilka's punches. The three redheads were caught up in a melee of their own.
"Henry, open the jar!"
Rowan struck the abbot across the face with her staff, giving Henry an opportunity to run behind the table, putting space between himself and the implacable angel. Henry pulled the jar from his satchel and cradled it in the elbow of his left arm. Whatever this was, it might be their last chance. Please don't be a curse, he thought, as he uncorked the stopper. He peered inside. There was nothing. The jar was empty. Useless. Henry looked up just in time to see the abbot's mace swinging toward his head. The jar slipped from Henry's grasp, smashing on the floor, as he instinctively raised his sword to parry the blow. When he lifted it up, however, he found himself squinting at a blinding glare. The weapon trembled in his hand, roared like a rushing wind, and its blade shone with the brilliance of noonday. The abbot recoiled, shielding his face. Henry's sword, the one he had pulled from the stone, the one he had blamed for ruining his life, flared with a new power. "Whoa, dude, it's good to be back in my blade. My man Sergei, long time no see." The voice was in Henry's head. "Apollo?" Henry thought tentatively. "The one and only," the voice replied. It was the sword. "It looks like you got yourself in a jam. What are we doing, my man?" "We're fighting an angel," Henry thought. "An evil angel." "Right on, let's kick some ass." The sword hissed like fire. Henry leaped into the air with Apollo blazing above his head. He yelled and brought the gleaming blade down upon the abbot, hacking a grisly furrow across his supernaturally handsome visage. Blood splattered on Henry's face, into his mouth. He spat it out. Now the angel's cheek hung from his jaw like the open pages of a book, exposing teeth and bone. Henry's thumb felt the symbol of the sun on Apollo's hilt. He advanced while his enemy shrank back. "Apollo, I'm Henry, by the way, Henry Gibson." Henry hovered in the air, wings outstretched, staring down the wounded angel through a mass of wavy black hair. "Who's Henry?" the sword asked. "We'll talk names later," Henry thought. Then unleashed Apollo against the angel. The villain cowered, desperately defending himself against the storm of steel and sunlight. But soon another slash had cut through his belly, and he clutched at the spilling entrails with one hand. Rowan joined in the attack, swinging her staff like a cudgel. The tide of battle had clearly shifted, and the abbot turned to flee. Using his mace, he smashed the glass of a nearby window and jumped out, flapping his wings frantically. "No!" Henry screamed, watching the angel fly away. If the abbot escaped, he would heal, and he would be prepared to fight again. Henry could not let that happen. "Navara!" Henry called. "The abbot! He's getting away!" Henry ran over to the warlock. "Can I carry you?" Navara shot another blast at the rampaging golem. "Okay?" She seemed confused, but allowed Henry to grab her around the waist. He took off, jumping through the broken window and flying into the cold mountain air. "This is amazing," Navara said, holding out her arms. "I've always wanted to fly." "Do you see him?" Henry yelled, as they flew eastward over the treetops. "There," she said, pointing. "Can you get him?" Navara stretched her arms toward the large winged creature ahead of them. Green bolts of magic shot from her hands. 1, 2, with the third blast, the angel fell.